Things are gonna get crazy!
Most everyone's mad here.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. How are we all doing, everybody? Have you had a good weekend? Have things been going well with you? I definitely do hope so, because I can tell you right now that I am amped up and I am fully ready, and I truly am excited for this episode, because as you may have noticed in the past episodes of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, and oh, by the way, thank you TK for the subscription right there, but as I was saying, things have been pretty slow. The episodes have been smaller than usual. I was only able to do 4 stories instead of the usual 5, and some of the stories, well, they're not as, like, exciting as what they would be. Oh, and thank you for the subscription there, King Cerulean. Yeah, definitely starting things off with some more subscriptions. Definitely fun to see. But anyways, I know that things have been slow, but lately though, with this episode in particular, oh boy, this is going to be one of the biggest episodes that we've had recently. This is going to be one in which it is jam-packed with a whole lot of big headline stories that we are going to go and discuss. So I can guarantee you that this episode will surpass the 2-hour mark. So strap yourselves in, folks. We are going to be in for one hell of a long ride, or one wild ride, as I should say. Yes, it will be long, but don't worry, it will definitely be worth it, and you will be experiencing a whole bunch of crazy emotions in the meantime. So don't worry, this will be an unforgettable episode, and definitely one you won't want to miss. Now, with that said and done, I would like to go into the chat wall, and it's time that I want to ask you all, are you prepared for today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast? Let me hear it, folks. Oh, and we got another subscription from Epix Android. Thank you so much. And apparently, on my Twitch, there's already a hype train going on. So if that signifies that you are all ready, well then perfect. I think that means that it is time that we shall go and get things started. And with the first story that I would like to talk to you all, it's in regards to the fact that I am aware that we have had a couple of teaser trailers that came out for some high-profile animated features that are going to be coming out at the end of the year. However, considering that it would be considered crossing the picket lines if I would talk about these trailers in my podcast, since this was something that has been confirmed to me by SAG-AFTRA themselves, I will not be discussing about them, because as an actor myself, and that I do stand in solidarity with the strikers, as I already told you before, I am putting any trailer talks on hold until the strikes are over. I mean, keep in mind, I'm AniMat, not Drew Barrymore. So, with that said, though, there is one thing that I do want to talk about in terms of one of those teaser trailers. Not necessarily about the teaser trailer itself, but something that it has presented, and something in which it has been bothering my mind a little bit. And I just want to have a quick discussion. And that is specifically in regards that we are getting the return of not just Chicken Run, but apparently also the return of Mrs. Tweedy. Yes, when the new teaser trailer for Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget came out from Netflix, they have revealed right at the end that the villain is going to be none other than the same villain as the first feature, Mrs. Tweedy. And from there, I've seen a whole lot of people making discussions in regards to if this really is Mrs. Tweedy. Like, some people are thinking that maybe it's not actually her, and that they would go and theorize that, oh, well, maybe it's actually her sister, or maybe this is her daughter, or maybe this is like a robot clone or something like that. A lot of people have been theorizing about the possibility maybe who we are seeing here is not the same one that we saw in the original Chicken Run. But alas, no. For the most part, it looks like it will be Mrs. Tweedy. Not only have many sources actually did confirm that it is indeed the character, but to further cement it that it really is Mrs. Tweedy, they brought back Miranda Richardson to go and reprise her role, which actually makes her one of the few original cast members to actually come back to Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget, alongside others such as Imelda Staunton as Bunty. You also got, who else is there? Lynn Ferguson as Mac, and also Jane Horrock as Babs. Now, I know that it is a pretty controversial subject in regards to some of the recasting of Chicken Run, where some did return and some did not, while others could have come back, but somehow Aardman or Netflix decided not to. But that's like a whole different story altogether. But in this case here, what I want to go and primarily discuss is the fact that we do have the return of the one and only Mrs. Tweedy. Now, before anything, I would like to go and make a statement that, for those of you who aren't aware, I love the first Chicken Run. I think it is a fantastic movie, and I would even go as far and say that it is one of the best stop-motion animated films out there, and even one of the best animated films, like a fantastic movie in itself. In fact, I would say it's the kind that it would go and parody a specific genre, but then it would go and actually redefine the genre as is and become one of the best of that genre, because Chicken Run is an entire parody of those prison escape films, but it turns out to be one of the best escape films out there. So yeah, I definitely do love that movie, and I would even say in regards to Mrs. Tweedy, she definitely is an imposing villain. Like, they did a great job making that character as like this ruthless and heartless warden, and especially with the fact that they really did a great job playing around with the whole chicken theme, and how she has this factory where she would go and create these chicken pies. So honestly, there's a factor, like, it's comical, but there's also something that, like, it makes her threatening. It's like she's still a villain that you really don't want to mess with. So honestly, overall with Chicken Run, very well made movie. They did a fantastic job all around with creating the characters, the animation, and even the storyline is just like, so much of it is just fantastic, and I highly recommend that you go and watch it. But when it comes to Dawn of the Nugget, I just can't help but have my doubts. Like, the thing is that I'm not completely opposed to the fact that we are getting a sequel to Chicken Run, but I feel like it's the kind of movie where I have to ask, do we really need a sequel to Chicken Run? Because it's one of those films that I feel like it's something that doesn't need a sequel. Like, it's meant to be its own thing. We don't necessarily need to have like a massive continuation, especially when the ending of that movie really wraps up very well. Like, whatever loose ends that they would have, it would all tie up at the end of the feature. And this might be spoilers for those who haven't actually seen Chicken Run, and for that I do apologize, but I just want to go and quickly state that at the end of Chicken Run, like, there's like no problems at all at the end, and every issue has pretty much been addressed and has been resolved. The chickens have escaped the coop, and now they're living in their own little land happily ever after. All the chickens are happy. And as for Mrs. Tweedy, they pretty much emphasize that she is gone. She is out of the picture. And to further prove that, I actually do have the movie right here. And just to show you what happened to Mrs. Tweedy, like, here we have over here that and to give you a bit of context beforehand, with Mrs. Tweedy, The thing is that the chickens finally managed to escape her coop. Like, they managed to finally get out of there. Mrs. Tweedy was close to, getting rid of Ginger and stuff, but Ginger got the upper hand. And what happened was that Mrs. Tweedy ended up blocking the gravy machine, which caused the entire factory to just explode, and gravy just splattered everywhere. And this was the final shot that we do see with Mrs. Tweedy. So let's just have a quick look at that. Hold on, let it load, because my computer needs to remember that there's a video that I want to play. So okay, give it time, be patient. So as you can see, like, this is something that emphasizes that she's gone. She is fully out of the picture, and there's a very high chance that you ain't ever gonna see her again. And I mean, when filmmakers do something like this, is to go and emphasize that they are gone. If they wanted to go and say that, oh, maybe Mrs. Tweedy is going to return, then like, they would have done like some kind of post-credit scene where you would see her come back or something like that. But no, this is actually the last shot where you see her husband just pushing down a giant door right in front of her face. And now she's like pretty much squished, like this is to go and signify that there's a very high chance that Mrs. Tweedy is gone. And her husband is now single. So this is all to say she dead. All right, she gone. But then suddenly everything changed when now we see in Chicken Run 2 somehow Mrs. Tweedy all glamorous and putting on her makeup, that she's having she's making a comeback. She is going to be the new villain in the sequel, or she is going to be the villain in the sequel, not necessarily new. And apparently she's also going to be alongside apparently another villain, I guess, named Reginald Smith, who's going to be played by U.S. comic actor Peter Serafinowicz. I think that's how you say his name. I don't know. It's a big one. I haven't practiced the pronunciation of that. But yeah, honestly, like, I look at this and I see how Mrs. Tweedy would somehow come back, and like, even in the teaser trailer where you see Ginger's reaction to how Mrs. Tweedy came back, it was like, oh no, it's her. For me, I can't help but feel like I have the same attitude as Poe in Rise of the Skywalker, where all I see is just somehow Tweedy returned. Like, that's all the teaser trailer told me. Now, in the teaser trailer's defense, and in the movie's defense, I will state that I am fully aware that it is just a teaser. Teaser trailers are not supposed to go and explain to you everything that is going on. And there may be a chance that in the actual movie itself, when that thing does get released, it will tell us about how is it that Tweedy returned. How is it that she managed to survive having an entire door or an entire freaking wall fallen upon her after that whole gravy explosion? So chances are they will go and try to explain it. But in this case over here, seeing her return, and not just that, seeing her return and looking pretty unscathed from the entire mess, like, I don't know, like, maybe there's been like a whole lot of time that has passed. Maybe it's just a little bit, but seeing her come back, I don't know, it's just, it raises more questions than answers. And I know that technically with the teaser trailer, they wanted to go and hype things up and try to say like, hey, look who's back, folks. It's meant to be as something like to go and anticipate, but I don't know. I feel like the effect, at least for me, doesn't necessarily work as well as what it would probably intend. And overall, I feel like when it comes to Tweedy's return, it makes me question Dawn of the Nugget more so than ever before. It makes me question if we really do need a sequel to Chicken Run. Do we really need to have Mrs. Tweedy to go and return? Do we need a continuation of this movie? And that, I don't know, I just feel uncertain. Now, I am definitely open to the idea that when the movie does come out later this year, I do feel like, okay, well, maybe it'll prove me wrong. Maybe it'll turn out to be a fun-filled picture. Now, is it going to meet the standards of the first movie? I don't know. That's a pretty tall order to go and ask, but still, though, maybe there is a chance that it will actually do a good job and it will prove me wrong. But for now, I don't know. I cannot help but feel pessimistic because I love the first Chicken Run. It was such a great picture, and a great picture that like stands in itself. I don't see why we really need to go and try to expand that into an entire franchise, that we need to have more stories in relation to Chicken Run. Do we need another movie with the chickens kind of doing the same thing? That I don't know. I mean, if they wanted to do like a TV show where we see the life of the chickens in their new little paradise, like, okay, that I would be open to it, like give Chicken Run the Shaun the Sheep treatment, that I could see that working. But a full-on sequel where they're kind of doing the same thing, I don't know. That one is kind of like it's just iffy. And with the more ideas that they would keep on introducing with it, the more that I can't help but feel like there's just something about it that feels unnecessary. And I think that, that's my biggest trouble with Dawn of the Nugget right now. It's just, in my mind, I feel like this entire movie just feels unnecessary. And the movie will have to do a lot to try to convince me that, yes, we would need Dawn of the Nugget. Yes, there is a reason why we want to continue Chicken Run. So, I don't know, like, at best, we will wait and see, but I don't know. I just feel confused, and I just need to question why the fridge is it that Mrs. Tweedy is coming back. So just to go and express my thoughts on that. All right, so with that said and done, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I would like to ask you all, how do you feel about Mrs. Tweedy's return to Chicken Run, this time around coming back for the sequel with Dawn of the Nugget? And especially if you are a fan of the first Chicken Run movie, I would love to know your thoughts on this. All right. Considering what happened to Mrs. Tweedy in the first Chicken Run, and knowing now that she's gonna return as the main villain, or at least one of the main villains, I only got one question. How the heck is she still alive? Yeah, that's going to be I think that's going to be one of the biggest obstacles of the movie. Try to explain to us why Mrs. Tweedy has returned, okay? You cannot pull off that same bullcrap as Rise of the Skywalker and just say, somehow Tweedy returned, okay? So, hopefully Aardman has a plan on that. Let's see. When I saw her in that teaser, I remember saying out loud in the middle of my college campus, how the F did she not die? Granted, I'm not opposed to having her as the villain, but the homie's dead, right? But if they have a good idea to go off of, it could probably work more than explaining it away with Mrs. Tweedy's crazy sister. Also, I feel bad discussing this right now considering I had some McNuggets for lunch. Wait, am I the bad guy? I mean, that depends. If the movie shows Mrs. Tweedy running a McDonald's-like company, then maybe you are part of the problem. I would say that right now what you are experiencing is supersize me guilt. That you're watching a movie like that about how the animals were badly treated before becoming McDonald's products. You feel bad about it, but then after a day or two, you're like, whatever, let's go and get a McDouble. All right. Don't worry. You may feel guilty now about your McNuggets, but don't worry. Tomorrow, you'll forget about it. And you'll probably crave more McNuggets. Let's see now. I did enjoy the trailer, though I wouldn't necessarily say that it is a great trailer. I just feel like the first movie was better off as an original, as a movie without a sequel. At least Bella Ramsey is in this movie. She's the one who voiced Hilda and played Ellie from the Last of Us series. However, the only thing I found iffy about this trailer is how did Mrs. Tweedy survive? She was dead, big flat, gone forever, going to hell. She's alive, she's alive, and very well groomed. Yeah, I don't know, man. So far from what I've been oh, excuse me, it's just my lunch coming back a bit, but from what I've been seeing, yeah, like a lot of people are questioning about how did Mrs. Tweedy come back. I mean, maybe the marketing did work and like it did pique our interest, and the fact that I am talking about it, well, I mean, I guess whatever the teaser trailer wanted to do, it kind of succeeded. But I don't know, like hopefully they will have a better answer. But for me personally, I feel like with what they are doing, yeah, it's having me discuss about it, but I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, because I don't necessarily feel fully positive about seeing Mrs. Tweedy return. Let's see. I'm honestly very confused. While I'm really curious about Chicken Run 2, since the trailer did intraday me, I really don't like the idea of Mrs. Tweedy coming back as the villain. If we would have gotten a different villain is one thing, but bringing her back might make it suffer. Unless she's actually Tweedy's crazy sister. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Like in this generation we got somehow Tweedy returned, but then I remember for the millennials back in the day, that kind of explanation is just the crazy sister. Oh my god. It's funny how the Little Mermaid 2 has that, well, I wouldn't say it has that reputation, but the Little Mermaid 2 does have a bit of a cult following in itself, and a lot of people would even consider Melody as a Disney princess. But then again, actually, it's kind of funny that with the popularity, with the cult fame rising for that movie, so is that infamous line of just Ursula's crazy sister. And who knows? Maybe they'll do the same thing as the Little Mermaid 2. I mean, yeah, Miranda Richardson is going to be coming back as Mrs. Tweedy, but then again, Pat Carroll did return to not as Ursula, but as Ursula's crazy sister. So who knows? Maybe they'll do the same thing. Let's see. What other comments do we have? While I do question if Chicken Run really does deserve a sequel, seeing Mrs. Tweedy return and expanding on her love of technology by giving her a new base and turning her into a 60s supervillain does sound like it could bring a lot of cool scenes with the chickens triumphing onto her tech. As for how she survived, maybe her death was just greatly exaggerated. Oh god, the funny thing is, now that you mentioned that she has a bit of this like 1960s aesthetic, the funny thing is, now I see with Mrs. Tweedy's brand new look, with her clothes and with her makeup, does she not look more in place in the Minions movie? I don't know, considering that the Minions really did emphasize like the 60s and the 70s, I feel like with her fashion right now, she would feel more in place in that feature. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I just feel like that, like nowadays, especially with considering how both Minion movies, with the 2015 film and Rise of Gru, became massive phenomenons, I just feel like right now that 60s and 70s aesthetic, now it's associated with the Minions. So now, because of that comment right there, I can't help but think that they just turned Mrs. Tweedy into a Minions villain. Oh my god. All right, I think I'm gonna read one more comment and then we're gonna jump onto our first break. Let's see. When I saw the teaser trailer, even though I was skeptical of the sequel, it looked all right, but I was surprised that they brought Mrs. Tweedy again at the end with Miranda Richardson reprising her role. I thought she was full on dead after Mr. Tweedy killed her after being abused for so long through physical and taunting, but seeing her bring back just ends up raising more questions. Yeah, I know she's a great villain, but do we really need her in terms of maybe rehashing? I know, right? Like, it's kind of like if in The Lion King 2, instead of having Zira, they would end up bringing back Scar for some reason. It's kind of in that attitude. But again, keep in mind that what we just saw with Mrs. Tweedy's return and that whole announcement, that is only in a teaser. And there will be, or there could be a chance that in the actual movie itself, they will have the time to go and explain how is it that she returned and how is it that somehow she decided to get this Minions-like aesthetic. So with that said, it is now time we're going to go onto our first break, and then we're going to go into the real major news in AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, where with this one coming up, we got an update on a recent controversy, and things are about to go from bad to worse, especially for these two particular filmmakers. All right, folks, moving on to our next story. With this one, we actually have an update to a major controversy that happened during the summer, where at one point we were celebrating one of the best animated movies of the year. And then suddenly one report came in, and while the love for that particular movie is still there, I cannot necessarily say the same about two particular filmmakers who were attached to that film. And I am talking, of course, about Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Now, to go and give you all a quick recap as to what happened, there was an article that was released not long after Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse in which they discuss about that feature and how it was actually turned out that apparently, and I'm just going to say it is all allegedly for legal purposes, but I mean, a lot of it does sound very legit. But allegedly, there were 4 anonymous animators who came in and they actually told their story about how Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was a complete nightmare of a production. And the major reason was because of the toxic work environment that was developed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller. The way they would go and run the production is an absolute nightmare, especially with the kind of toxic work ethic that just makes them feel very incompetent as filmmakers in animation, especially when Phil Lord doesn't have an understanding of how storyboards work, and he would go and force animators to go and build scenes from top to bottom again and again and again. It just makes it very difficult to go and work on the feature, resulting in the animators to go and be completely overworked, working 11 hours a day, 7 days a week onto the feature. And this is not even to mention how among the over 1,000 animators who have worked on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, over 100 of them ended up quitting because they couldn't handle the pressure anymore. And on top of that, like, what makes this even worse is that Across the Spider-Verse was not the only instance that Phil Lord and Chris Miller would go and create that kind of toxicity in their productions. This is apparently something that's been very common throughout their entire careers. And there have been many notable features in which they would do the exact same thing and they would treat their animators the exact same way. For movies like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, for the Lego Movie, for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and for the Mitchells vs. the Machines, to name a few. So from there, it really opened up it pretty much opened up how their reputation in the animation industry is not necessarily as solid as some people may think, especially when nowadays there are actually plenty of animators out there who have actually made a vow to never work with Phil Lord and Chris Miller again. And since then, I would say that the reputation of Phil and Chris has pretty much become divided. I wouldn't say that they have went on a massive downhill spiral. I would say that their reputation was completely split. Where on one hand, there are still some people who are major fans of Phil Lord and Chris Miller, that they admire them as talented filmmakers, especially still feeling that high off of the amazingness of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, that they love that movie so much and that they love Phil Lord and Chris Miller for working on that film. So like they would still have that sense of like glamour and amazement of Phil and Chris, especially thanks to Across the Spider-Verse. But then again, there's also another side in which there are plenty of people who actually do feel betrayed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller. And especially with the fact that with how they would go and treat their animators, let's just say that people's perspective on Lord and Miller is not that different to their perspective on studio executives and the way that they would treat the strikers. And yes, I am legit saying that the way that people view Phil Lord and Chris Miller is not that different to how they would view Bob Iger and David Zaslav. So that's the best way to go and summarize that whole controversy. But it looks like now we actually do have a bit of an update. And for the first time in months, Phil Lord and Chris Miller have actually addressed the controversial production of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And it can actually be found in this article on Variety. Now, in here, this is just your typical interview article in which they would go and talk to Phil Lord, Chris Miller, and Anthony Knight in regards to the season 2 finale of their Apple TV Plus show, The After Party. And they would go and discuss about what happened in that last episode, what are the plans for the future, and all that kind of stuff. But the most intriguing part and the thing that caught the most attention is actually the final question that they went and asked, which is right over here, in which the interviewer asked them, "I do want to give you a chance to talk about labor issues. How do you feel this many months into the strike? Additionally, is there anything you'll like to say to address criticisms about working conditions on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which is a Lord and Miller production?" This is what Phil Lord has to say. Starting off, he actually discussed about the strike and regarding about how things are going, especially with writers, considering that Lord and Miller are part of the Writers Guild of America. He says here, reading from my source on Variety, "I've always been optimistic about this labor movement because these deals seem incredibly makeable. And the main problem is that only one party wants to negotiate. But as long as both parties will come to negotiate in good faith and address the very real problems like writers' pay, which is down 25% and is a concrete issue that can be addressed, and make the business healthy so people can do this job and pay their rent, we're going to be in great shape. I'm frustrated, but I think this is an imminently solvable problem." Okay, so that's what they have to say about the strike right now. So they do have high hopes that the writers will get a good deal. But then came the comments about Spider-Verse. "In terms of Spider-Verse, that was a really hard movie to make. We're really proud of how hard everybody worked, and it was very demanding. But we're just really proud of the crew and everything they put into it." So yeah, this is apparently the comment that they decided to leave. This is their response to the entire controversy of the production of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. The fact that Lord and Miller are just very proud of the people who worked on the film. And I remember seeing that comment, like when a friend of mine sent me the article and showed me like what they had to say. My first thought in my mind was just looking at this article, looking at what Phil Lord said, and all I can ask is just, that's it? Is that really all you have to say about it? So let's just go and take a look. Like, this little crud, this snot of a response over here, like, as you could see, we have no apology. We don't have either Lord or Miller saying that they are sorry, so no apology can legit be found. There is no acknowledgement of the fact that their work ethic might be pretty toxic and there might be some flaws that are put into it. So no acknowledgement on how their filmmaking process might be a bit problematic and might need some tune-up. And there is no realization that what the animators went through shouldn't have gone through that. Like, okay, maybe there is a tiny bit of an acknowledgement that the production of Across the Spider-Verse was pretty rough, but there was never anything that crossed in their minds to go and say, yeah, maybe the production shouldn't have been that rough, and that maybe, just maybe, that the animators should not have gone through that. No, none of that, nothing at all. And the only response that they have is just to say, I am proud of you. Like, apparently just saying I'm proud of you is going to go and resolve all those issues, all that problems. Like, everything can be fixed by just giving them affirmation to say, I am proud of you. As it's like if Phil Lord and Chris Miller are living in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, where somehow they feel like the thing that the animators really need the most is just affirmation from whom they perceive is their father figures, which is themselves. It's just so the father figure can step up and say, I am proud of you. You might as well go and pat them on the head and just say, good boy. Just go and do that. That's it. That's the only compensation that the animators really got after being called out for the mistreatment of the animators. It is freaking ridiculous. Just when you think that an apology note couldn't get any worse, somehow Lord and Miller just came in with this. And honestly, I would even say that in the recent weeks, this has got to be the worst response that I have ever seen, because you would go and compare it to some others that they would be deep into controversy, and like even they managed to find a way to actually go and apologize, to actually go and say the right things. Like a great example, in contrast, take a look at the controversy in relation to Jimmy Fallon, in which Jimmy Fallon has been called out for similar controversies to Lord and Miller, to develop a very toxic environment during production and just making the lives of the crew working there a living hell. And from there, Jimmy Fallon did actually respond, and he did say that he was sorry. And not only that, there were actually some people, like some of his celebrity friends and some crew members, that actually stepped up to go and defend Jimmy Fallon. Now, this is not to go and fully defend Jimmy Fallon, like I personally do believe that Jimmy Fallon should still be held accountable for the mistreatment of his workers and for developing a toxic environment on his show. But this is just to go and say that at the very least, Jimmy Fallon does have the right mind to go and apologize. That is when compared to Lord and Miller, who decided to say, nah, they don't need an apology. They just need affirmation. You just need to tell them that we're proud of you, as if that's gonna fix everything. It's so mind-boggling. Like, who the fridge thought that this was a great idea? I wonder what their PR team is thinking. I wonder what their lawyers are thinking. Like, how can you just put up a response and just say, I'm proud of you, as if that's gonna somehow make things okay? It's embarrassing. Like, honestly, I think the best way to describe it is that all of this is just freaking embarrassing. And I'm even gonna say right now, like, the thing that I personally find that is the most frustrating of all this, especially with this response that kind of did confirm that that honestly, not only did it confirm about what actually happened during production, but also the complete disregard to the well-being of their animators, is that when it comes to Phil Lord and Chris Miller, a big part of their brand feels like it is a massive lie. Like, the vision of what people have about Phil Lord and Chris Miller turns out to be not true at all. Because when it comes to Phil Lord and Chris Miller, they have always been perceived as animation lovers. These are two people who are, they are big fans of the craftsmanship and the people that would go and work on these productions, that they are aware about all the hard work that goes into animation and all, and like all the trials and tribulations that would be put onto it. And as a result, they would go and create these beautiful pieces of art. Like Lord and Miller are two of the biggest advocates in Hollywood that animation is art, that only a few others would actually top them off, like Guillermo del Toro, for example. But yeah, with Lord and Miller, you know, they are big fans and big admirers of the craftsmanship of animation, or at least that's what their brand is perceived to be. That's how they would go and portray themselves on social media and on interviews and all that kind of stuff. And to even further push that brand, to push that ideology that they do carry, you might remember that in a few of their movies, they would actually go and try to address the animators, you know, like really give them credit that it's not just Lord and Miller's movie, but it's also the entire team's movie. Films such as Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs or Mitchell's vs. the Machines, where they would go say that, oh, this movie is made by a lot of people, or it's made by a lot of humans and stuff like that. You know, like you would think that Lord and Miller are the biggest advocates for animation and for animators. But as it turns out, with what has been revealed, it's a massive lie. Like you would think that if they do unironically care about the craftsmanship and about the animators who are always hard at work on the medium that they oh so adore, you would think that they would also care about their well-being. You would think that they would legitimately care about the working conditions that are in animation, something in which they actually did address when they wrote that email to Sony Pictures a decade ago, in which it was leaked during the big Sony hack at the end of 2013, where they were, you know, when Sony Pictures asked Phil Lord and Chris Miller to come back to Sony Pictures, but then Phil Lord said no because Sony Pictures was treating the animators like paper. And in a cruel twist of irony, the actual problem is, well, a bit of Sony Pictures, but it is primarily Lord and Miller's fault. That Lord and Miller are the ones who actually are treating the animators like paper. And all this just makes it feel like Lord and Miller, in reality, are the Ellen DeGeneres of the animation industry. That their entire brand is just a massive lie, where they're portraying themselves as selfless and they want to be helpful, that they care a lot about their crew, that they love that they love doing what they do because they love the medium so much. But in reality, they're actually selfish. They do not give a crap about the well-being or the mental health of their animators. All they care about is just themselves. To go and climb up the Hollywood ladder and to go and network with many prominent names so that they can go and become popular and end up taking the credit of all the other people's hard work. That the fact that with Lord and Miller's movies, that only they are the names that are associated with their pictures and no one else. And sadly, that marketing is actually very effective. Because if you look into the sad reality when it comes to many of those features that Lord and Miller has produced and stuff like that, you would be shocked that not many people could actually go and remember the names of some of the other people who actually did work on it who aren't necessarily actors. Like, think about all the movies that Lord and Miller produced. Not directed, just produced. You would be shocked that most people cannot actually name who are the directors of either Mitchell's vs. the Machines, of either Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse, or I would even say the same thing with Cocaine Bear. Many people would forget that Elizabeth Banks is actually the director of that particular movie. But no, because Lord and Miller are the most notable names of those pictures, they are the ones who end up taking all the credit. And more, it kind of feels like Lord and Miller doesn't actually care about their animators or actually care about the people who would do the animation. There was even one report that I actually did hear in terms of one of the new movies that they have produced called Strays, in which apparently the people who would provide the 2D animation at Titmouse, they did not get credit. Like they at the most, they would only say that, oh, the 2D animation was done by animators at Titmouse, but the individuals who actually worked on it, they did not get any form of credit whatsoever. And you would think that with Lord and Miller, that they would go and advocate to have their names be prominently displayed for that movie. But no, they just completely disregard it. And again, it makes it feel like their image as animation lovers is just nothing more but a lie. And honestly, for me, I feel like, I just feel like with the reputation of Lord and Miller, it's just dead. For me, like, honestly, I lost all respects for Lord and Miller. Yes, they are talented as writers and filmmakers, but outside of that, as individuals, I feel like with this entire situation, like the fame really got into their heads, especially if they think that they're going to go and solve their problems just by saying, I am proud of you. Like it's pretty much at the point where really these are people who do not deserve the credit for what they do. And really all the support and all the love for the craftsmanship of animation, or even like with the way that they're trying to go and advocate for like labor unions and workers' rights, they're just in it for themselves. They don't care about anyone else. They don't even care about like the working conditions for the animators. And you would think that if they do care, they would go and help out others as well. But in this case here, no, it is nothing more but a flat out lie. It's nothing more but virtue signaling, and any actual efforts is only to go and give themselves an extra boost. So this is just an update that I want to go and discuss about and to go and really highlight, because to this day, not many people are aware about the unfortunate working conditions of Across the Spider-Verse, but it needs to be addressed and it needs to be highlighted of how Phil Lord and Chris Miller are a massive problem in this. And also, one more thing that I do want to go and address is specifically in regards to Chris Miller, because I know a lot of people are going to say that technically it's more just Phil Lord who is the problem, that he is the one who's causing the grand majority of the toxicity in this entire situation. And technically it's just Phil Lord who has made this response. But I would go and argue that Chris Miller is a complicit in this. I feel like Chris Miller should be held accountable equally to Phil Lord, considering that he is capitalizing on that success, that technically his fame is through all the abuse and the exploitation and all the working conditions that the animators have to go and suffer through. And you would think that Chris Miller would go and actually like take Phil Lord on the side and actually have a talk with him to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't treat our animators like that. Or actually go and like, even with this interview, maybe he would have said something and maybe he would have done an apology to the animators or anything like that. But in actuality, no, like he just lets things happen and just capitalize on the fame of it all. The fact that, yeah, like the animators have to suffer so much, but he might as well do nothing. And according to the reports, the grand majority of the time, he has done nothing whatsoever. And he would just go and capitalize on the fame and take the credits of the animators. So yes, I do think Chris Miller should be held accountable alongside Phil Lord. Because after all, it's never just Phil Lord or Chris Miller. It's always Phil Lord and Chris Miller. All right, so with that said and done, I would like to go into the chat wall. And now I would like to go and ask you all, how do you feel about Phil Lord and Chris Miller's response for overworking their animators? Let me know what you all think on this. All right. Once I briefly met Phil Lord a while back for a Mitchell's vs. the Machines panel with Peter Ramsey. He seemed to not be interested in talking to people, but at least he told me about Clone High Season 2. But Peter Ramsey was really cool with me. Long story short, I just think Phil Lord doesn't seem to care about his own fans that much based on my experience. I recorded the whole thing if you guys want to see for yourself, but yeah, I think this is catching up now with a bad reputation, unfortunately. And that's honestly another thing I want to go and address, because, I just realized, because like with Jimmy Fallon, at least he has his defenders and he has people trying to defend him by saying that, well, no, that's not what's actually happening in the industry. Now, I could be wrong. Notice how you like, again, like maybe like there might have been that I haven't seen, But have you noticed that there has literally been no one defending Phil Lord and Chris Miller? And I mean specifically high profile people in the animation industry. Like, there's nobody in the animation industry, whether it be his personal friends or animators who have worked with Lord and Miller, that none of them would go and defend their actions or say that the claims were false or anything like that. They would just let it all, like, they've been pretty silent about the scenario so far. And I think that is very telling that the whole scenario, not only is it real, but it is a major problem that not many people are brave enough to go and address. So just want to go and clarify that it doesn't sound like the animation industry has Lord and Miller's side on this controversy. Let's see. Lord Almighty, they didn't even say that they did anything wrong. They didn't even say, I'm sorry. They most likely aren't going to change their method. Like, the look at the storyboards and have a set plan. Don't change your mind after completed animation. They're not going to change. Beyond the Spider-Verse will probably have the same conditions unless enough people yell at them to change or to stick to their plans and not change their minds. Let's see. I never thought I'd say this, but Lord and Miller eat a bag of dicks, lads. This is as if a celebrity got called out for being a serial sexual abuser. Don't want to say the big word, or else I would get in trouble with YouTube. And their only response being, "Hey, check out these cool fart noises I can make with my mouth," and then proceed to raspberry for 20 minutes. It's not something to celebrate. It just means to distract from the problem. Exactly. My God, man, JF, you nailed it right there. Dear Lord and Miller, this is almost Channel Awesome levels of horrendously tone deaf. I mean, that comment is right up there with "we're sorry you feel that way" in terms of disguising apathy. If this is what it takes to make stylized animation, I'll gladly take the Elemental Ruby Gilman style over the Spider-Verse Mutant Mayhem style. If Disney and Pixar pulled off something like this, people would be out for Pete Doctor's blood. They went full Doug Walker. You never go full Doug Walker. Exactly, man. Let's see. This response from Phil Lord feels like the equivalent of, once again, the equivalent of "we're sorry you feel that way" quote from Channel Awesome, because what he said was just tone deaf. Lord and Miller have a chance to apologize, but they did not. It makes me lose my respect for these guys even more, despite loving some of their films they have done. The films they produce should be given more credit to the directors, like the directors of Spider-Verse films, instead of Lord and Miller, because they are a disgrace. Let's see. I'm just as disappointed as you are, Matt. Seeing these two guys I respected as people who understood the animation process, but turned out to be just as bad as executives like Harvey Weinstein. Well, maybe not that much, but I get what you mean. I can handle it. I can handle it if animators were under the right amount of stress, but just as long as if it wasn't on an abusive level. But seeing stuff like this makes me appreciate Pixar and DreamWorks in terms of how they treat their animators. Yeah, and someone even mentioned that even Trey Parker and Matt Stone have standards for the treatment towards their team. Or especially if you want the opposite of that, if you want the antithesis of Lord and Miller, go look up the production of Mutant Mayhem, because Jeff Rowan, Seth Rogen, and Evan Goldberg, they actually did work hard to ensure that the working conditions can be as good and as positive as possible. So major credits to them. Let's see now. In terms of tone deafness, Lord and Miller's ears doesn't even seem to function. Seeing them being so apathetic towards their animation team really shows how they really don't care about their well-being or how they were overworked. Even Seth Rogen cared more about animators, and we all know what happened with Sausage Party. Thankfully, he did improve with the new TMNT movie. All right, I'll just go and read one more comment here. I'll just go with... I swear these dudes, no apology, and all that Phil Lord said was he was just proud of his animators. These guys are such dicks. They need help, and I mean mental health. I really feel bad for the animators and the way they went through. My advice is, if I was an executive like Lord and Miller, is to treat them with respect, give them like a cool off and have production go smoothly instead of just treating them like slaves. Slavery is wrong. You guys never go down that path. Exactly. So it really is the fact that with this response, Phil Lord and Chris Miller are either absolute idiots or they really are willfully ignorant because they're just way too blinded by their own fame and glory. All right, so we're going to go on to our next break, and we will go and have a more positive discussion in which we will be looking into the future of Annapurna Animation. So stay tuned for that. All right, now let's go and move forward to our next story. I know some steam has been let out after the last story in relation to Phil Lord and Chris Miller, but now let's go into something a bit more positive. And what I'd like to talk about is in regards to Annapurna Animations. Now, you may recall that during the summer, Annapurna Animations did one of the biggest animation miracles in recent years by bringing back Nimona. And not only is that action like something amazing in itself, but the movie, I gotta say, one of the best films of the year. Regardless if it's animation or just in general, that film is just absolutely phenomenal, and it really did blow me away. If you guys have not seen that film, I highly recommend you to do so, because honestly, the fact that they would go and take action to actually revive that project after Blue Sky shut down, it's one of the best things that I've seen in the animation industry in terms of actions of what they would do during production. But what apparently with what they're doing with Nimona, or what they have done with Nimona, that's just the start of it. And recently, Annapurna Animation has announced a whole lot more projects that will be to come. So let's go and actually take a look with what they have in their future. And in this article here from Entertainment Weekly, they actually had a discussion with Annapurna Animation in regards to their upcoming lineup. Not just in terms of animation, but they also went a little bit in terms of what they have in the future of video games. But the biggest project that they have announced is that they are going to be doing a film adaptation of last year's video game hit Stray. And just to go and quickly read you here from my source on Entertainment Weekly, for those of you who don't know, released in 2022, Stray puts players in control of a stealthy cat who must traverse an underground city populated by robots and mutant bacteria with the help of a friendly drone, B12. An animated movie based on Stray is in active development. And if you may recall, last year, this was something that a lot of gamers were freaking out about, or just the internet in general, because this is a game in which the biggest selling point is the fact that you would play as a cat. No, you don't play as an anthropomorphic cat. You don't play as a talking cat. You don't play as like a supernatural cat. It's a game where you're literally just a common cat. And that was apparently enough for people to go, shut up and take my money. But yeah, so that was the big deal about Stray, and it turned out to actually be a very solid video game. A lot of people very much enjoyed it, and now it's at the point where its fame has gotten so high that now we're actually getting an animated feature, something that honestly kind of feels reminiscent to WALL-E in a way, where where it's primarily like you got a robot and a cat. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna let one of the leaders of Annapurna Animation, Robert Bear, to go and explain this entire thing. So let me just read you from my source here. This is a game that's all about what makes us human, and there are no humans in it. It's a buddy comedy about a cat and a robot, and there is such a hilarious dynamic. So there's comedy inherent in this, but there's not one human being in this movie. I think it's one of those reasons why the game was incredibly popular, that you are seeing the world through the point of view of an adorable cat. How did they pull that off? And how are we going to pull that off in the movie? We will, even though sometimes it feels impossible, but we know that's the essence of the game and the key to telling the story. And I'm not gonna lie, that did convince me that if they play their cards right with this Stray movie, I think this could actually turn out to be fantastic, because this really is primarily a movie about a robot and a cat. And if they're able to go and actually execute that well in a way that can be as engaging as the game itself, then I think Annapurna really does have a big winner with this one. So I think this might be something that we'll have to go and keep an eye out on. So yeah, I mean, like, it's the fact that you got a cat and you got a robot. So I mean, what the fridge more do you want? All right, moving on up though. And by the way, speaking of video games, just a quick sidebar that in this article they did briefly mention that there are going to be some other games that they will be releasing soon, including a game called 12 Minutes, in which it features an all-star cast of James McAvoy, Daisy Ridley, and Willem Dafoe. So that's going to be one to keep an eye out on. But I want to primarily discuss about the animated content that they have coming out. So on top of the Stray movie, there's also another animated feature that they have coming up, which will be directed by Nick Bruno, one of the directors of Nimona, alongside Troy Quayne. And apparently in here, the article doesn't really go much into detail of what this is going to be. They didn't really explain a whole lot of the story of the movie or what this feature is about. It's just mentioning that Nick Bruno is going to be working on an original animated feature. In fact, this is what Robert Baird has to say here. As for the film Bruno is working on, Baird won't say much. He does, however, point to the filmmaker's past work on Nimona and 2019 Spies in Disguise, as well as his work as the head of animation on 2015's The Peanuts movie. You get a sense just from those titles of the type of storyteller he is. A lot of his favorite movies have a sort of Spielbergian sense to them, and so the movie that he is developing with us right now is very much in that area. It's very high concept, it's very heartfelt, and Nick has a very huge heart and a very big sense of humor. So it's covering all those bases. So that's not really saying much to us. Like, all this is really saying is just that apparently Nick Bruno is working at Annapurna Animation, where he's going to be making a Spielberg-style movie. That is extremely vague. I don't know what it is. But then again, considering the tremendous work that Nick Bruno did on Nimona, I'll be optimistically curious to see what he has in store there. But then there is another animated movie that Robert Baird explained, and that is in regards to Chris Wedge. Yes, the director of the first Ice Age and the co-founder of Blue Sky Studios is going to be making an animated movie with them. And this one, I will say, has a very intriguing concept. To which it is stated here, Chris Wedge, who scored a Best Animated Feature nomination for the first Ice Age in 2003 and won the Oscar for Best Animated Short in 1999, is currently developing a film for Annapurna Animation titled FOO, or FOO. It's not a perfect acronym for Fish Out of Water, and that's what the story is about. It's about the first fish ever to climb out of the water and onto land. What you learn in this movie is that was the last thing in the world that the fish wanted to do. It's about his hilarious struggle to get back into the water, but to get back will require a lot of effort and a lot of change on this fish's part. That was the pitch that came out of Wedge's brain, and we just love it. And he would go even further to go and say, and this is a comment from the other head of Annapurna Animation, Andrew Milstein. He calls Wedge, who also made 2005's Robots and 2013's Epic, one of the seminal creators of the world of computer-generated animation. The DNA of Chris Wedge as an animator and as a comic storyteller exploring universal themes is absolutely infused in FOO. Baird believes the film finds him getting back to his roots of directing Ice Age and the storyteller that surrounded that movie. And there is something funny that I just gotta say in regards to Chris Wedge making this fish out of water movie, because it really does feel like, you know, it's like what Robert Baird said, that in a way Chris Wedge is kind of getting back to his Ice Age roots, and that he's making another movie that is set during doing like the beginning of time, where instead of like the Ice Age period, now we're going even further, where now we see the first ever fish that is on land. You know, I don't know. Somehow it feels like we're noticing this theme with Chris Wedge, and has kind of this fascination with telling stories that is set in prehistory. You know, that we're like, we have to really go backwards into time in order for him to go and tell a proper story. I mean, I know that he has done more contemporary stuff, such as Robots and 2013's Epic, which the latter, I will say, is a bit overhated. It's not, you know, I wouldn't say it's Blue Sky's best movie, but honestly, I would say it's one of their better movies, and there's a lot of tremendous work that is put onto there. And especially the animation, like, oh my god, the visuals on Epic is absolutely beautiful. So that's just something that I want to go and mention. But yeah, no, honestly, I do find it a bit funny. And, you know, I feel like in the right hands, I feel like if it's, you know, if we are going to get something that is similar to the veins of the first Ice Age, I think that movie could legitimately work out. And I know that it does feel a little bit familiar that we are getting people such as Nick Bruno and Chris Wedge, and they even mentioned that some other people such as Julie Zachary, a former Blue Sky Studios executive and the producer on Nimona, that we've been seeing more and more prominent Blue Sky people now entering into Annapurna Animation. And I know there are a lot of people, and I even saw in the chat wall that some people have even said that Annapurna Animation is becoming the next Blue Sky Studios. But I just want to go and quickly clarify, this is not what the studio wants to do. They don't want to be the next Blue Sky Studios. In fact, they actually did put out a comment regarding that. In which it is said here, Annapurna Animation isn't trying to replicate Blue Sky Studios. Andrew Milstein notes, Blue Sky was very unique. It had decades of history. There was a deep connective cultural tissue in the organization that you just can't break. It's those kinds of relationships that we're going to build on. You know, like, even though we are getting the same Blue Sky people, that doesn't make Annapurna the next Blue Sky Studios. You know, it's giving those people the opportunity to go and make more features again and to go and direct more films. And I would say that overall, with all the projects that they have revealed, I think Annapurna Animation is the new next animation studio to go and look out for, because a lot of the projects that they have, I gotta say, they're very promising. The Stray movie does sound very intriguing, and I mean, if people love the Stray video game, I can imagine the same kind of reactions will be happening with the feature film. Nick Bruno, I mean, a lot of people have a lot of great trust with him, especially after the amazing directorial work that he has done for Nimona, so I'm sure a lot of people will keep an eye out on that. And even the Chris Wedge movie with that fish out of water film, you know, I could see a lot of great comedic potential with that storyline. I think, honestly, it sounds like something that could be very fun and that you can actually make some kind of heartfelt story. And if it's going to be like the next generation of Ice Age, then honestly, I'm all open into it. So yeah, honestly, this is just giving me bright optimism for the future of Annapurna Animation, that they are off to not a great start, but a phenomenal start with what they have done with Nimona, and now that they're going to be coming in with more animated features with Strays, or the Nick Bruno project, or with the Fish Out of Water movie. Yeah, I think this is going to be stuff that it will be exciting to go and check out, and honestly, I can't wait to see what the future holds for them. I can't wait to see what's going to be the next animated film, or when their next animated film is going to come out. So, yeah, I mean, hey, I mean, all these projects, they sound great, and we'll see how it goes with Annapurna. All right, so with that said and done, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I'd like to go and ask you all, how do you feel about all these projects that Annapurna Animation has announced? How do you feel about the Stray movie, the Nick Bruno film, or Chris Wedge's Fish Out of Water movie? Let me know what you think on that. All right, let's see. After Nimona, I'm now excited for Stray. I already played the video game and loved it. I will watch the animated film adaptation with my cat. Like, come on, we all love cats, and imagine taking your cat like a child to watch Stray at the theater. Stray already went viral on TikTok, showing random videos of cat reactions to Stray. Meow meow. I don't know if they would be able to let people do that. And I'm just gonna say right now, honestly, this might be a confession, and I know like some people might resent me for saying this. I personally don't have a big fond for cats. Like, I'm not crazy for cats, mainly because of the fact that I do have a cat allergy. So honestly, with the way that cats make me physically feel, you know, it's not necessarily something that I can like deliver a whole lot of love. So I'm just saying. Let's see now. And I know even if I do have a legitimate excuse, like with a cat allergy, you would be surprised how many people can feel so turned off if you would go and mention that. Like, it has actually happened like in the past, like on one or two dating apps. I would mention that I have a cat allergy, and the girl would just be like, bye. Like, it can legit be that bad. All right. Anyways. Oh yeah, I remember Stray. Annapurna is really aiming high by adapting this new game, but also simple since it is a simple concept with a rich, complex execution. I always say well done simplicity will always be better than badly done complexity. I'm always open to new blood and stories, and hopefully this new studio will get a chance to shine no matter what it's made of. Let's see. Not gonna lie, when the Stray movie announcement came out, I was confused as hell. I never played the game, so I assumed it was an animated sequel to Strays. You know, that recent Will Ferrell and Jamie Foxx movie no one saw. But all jokes aside, Annapurna Animation is looking to show a ton of promise. Will it reach the same highs as Nimona? That's gonna be a wait and see, since that's a wicked high bar to pass. But still, I can't wait for more. I mean, yeah, you do bring up a very good point. Like, they had an incredible start with Nimona, but honestly, you can argue that the same can be said about Pixar. Like, they had a phenomenal start with Toy Story, or even Disney, for example. They had an incredible start with Snow White, but then following afterwards, like, yeah, they've had their ups and downs, but they've been still doing tremendously well. And maybe the same can be said about Annapurna. I mean, they had a beautiful start with Nimona, and like maybe for years to come Nimona will still be their best movie, but then again, that doesn't mean that the other stuff that they will bring out will be subpar. They will still be entertaining in their own right, so I'm just saying. And also, like, just that little joke about like the sequel to Strays. Yeah, do we honestly, after the discussion we had about Lord and Miller, do we need a sequel to a Lord and Miller production other than Beyond the Spider-Verse? Of course, I'm just saying, folks. Okay, what else do we got here? What other comments? I never played the Stray game before, but I have heard good things about it. Upon making a movie out of it, that sounds like an interesting idea about, although if they can make a good story out of it. I do wish Annapurna well in their future of animation after doing many auteur films over the years, as they do have promise right now with their upcoming projects. Oh, exactly, man. Annapurna is, you know, it's almost like it's almost as if you take A24 and you make them go a bit more mainstream. That's what I feel like Annapurna is right now. It's like a combination of traditional Hollywood and A24, and somehow you combine them together and you make something beautiful. Let's see, what other comments are there? Annapurna Pictures definitely proved themselves with Nimona, and I definitely am looking forward to what their plans are with their upcoming animated films. I'm definitely very curious about the Stray movie. While I haven't played the game itself, I could see how it could be as big of a game, so overall, this is exciting. Yeah, I feel like with Stray, I think the big appeal of it is that it's such an it's so non-contemporary in terms of what the story is and in terms of the concept. I feel like it's one of those that if done right, it's not a movie that will come out good. It's going to be a movie that will come out great. It's going to be the kind of thing that is like very different and very one of a kind, that it will truly stand out. And its uniqueness will play a significant factor if the execution could turn out very well. So I think like the uniqueness will be set aside so that if the execution proves itself to be great, then the uniqueness will come in to give itself massive bonus points. Let's see. I think I'll read one more comment before we go into the next story. I'll go, who shall it be? Yeah, I'll go with this one. I'm glad Nimona was finally revived and became a great success. Chris Wedge is easily one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, and Robots is my favorite Blue Sky movie. I can't wait to watch Fu, by the way. I hope he finally can do his director's cut of Robots, in which I've still got a campaign on Twitter to ask Disney to release it. I don't know, man. I mean, I understand the optimism for it and the enthusiasm, but I don't know if that's going to be something that could actually come out. I mean, like, it's a miracle that Nimona did come out, but I don't know if that same miracle can happen again with the director's cut of Robots. All right, but anyways, with that said, we're going to go and have another break. And when we do return, we are going to go and have a discussion of one website that was a major topic throughout the week, especially on social media. And I think it's time that I would have my opinion, my little piece on what I think about the site, or at least what do I think about it this time, because I've already done an entire video about this particular site. So stay tuned for that. Delayed. But anyways, yes, welcome back. And when it comes to our next story, we will be having a discussion that I'm sure you have seen make its massive rounds across social media. Something in which a lot of people have their gripes in terms of this particular website or their opinions about it, and how it has become a little bit overused and sometimes used in the wrong way. But then one article stepped in and actually revealed a whole lot more shady stuff in terms of this website. And what I will be talking about is in regards to Rotten Tomatoes, specifically this Vulture article called "The Decomposition of Rotten Tomatoes, the most overrated metric in movies that is erratic, reductive, and easily hacked, and yet Hollywood is in its grip." And this is actually written by Lane Brown. And I just want to go and quickly state this right now. I highly recommend that you go and read this article. It's actually a very fascinating piece. And to go and I'll do my best to try to summarize this this article here. But what this article would go and describe about Rotten Tomatoes is that the website has a massive problem, especially with the way that the Hollywood is using it as a marketing tool. And despite the fact that the way that its metric system works is very much flawed, and that a lot of people are not necessarily using it correctly, or how they're reading it can be flat out wrong, that doesn't stop Hollywood from doing everything they can in order to ensure that their movie can go and actually get a top rating. And there's even one example that this article actually wrote, that there are even some small companies that would try to take advantage of the system and actually, well, cheat their way in order to get some positive reviews. And that is the case with one movie called Ophelia, in which the distributor Bunker 15 would try to go and try to legitimately pay some smaller critics to go and give it a positive review, and then from there try to cash in that this is a fresh movie. And in a way, it actually did manage to work for them, because then they would get a bigger distributor to go and release the movie. It even said so right over here. It's actually this piece. Just because the tomato meter says a title is rotten, scoring below 60%, it doesn't need to stay that way. In fact, when when the movie first came out, it actually got a bunch of negative reviews. It started off at 46%. While most firm PR companies aim to get the attention of critics from top publications, Bunker 15 takes a more bottom-up approach, recruiting obscure, often self-published critics who are nevertheless part of the pool tracked by Rotten Tomatoes. In another break from standard practice, several critics say Bunker 15 pays them $50 or more for each review. And at the end of the day, they managed to go and find a bigger distributor. Like, that actually managed to work well for them, the fact that they made their review go from rotten to fresh. Apparently it says I'll read the whole part over here. Between October 2018 and January 2019, Rotten Tomatoes added 8 reviews to Ophelia's score. 7 were favorable, and most came from critics who have reviewed at least one or other Bunker 15 movies. The writer of a negative review says that Bunker 15 lobbied them to change it. If the critic wanted to give it a barely overall positive, then I know the editors at Rotten Tomatoes can get it switched. A Bunker 15 employee wrote. I also discovered another negative review of Ophelia from this period that was not counted by Rotten Tomatoes by a writer whose positive review of other Bunker 15 films had been recorded by the aggregator. Ophelia climbed the tomato meter to 62%, flipping from rotten to fresh. The next month, the distributor IFC Films announced that it acquired Ophelia to release in the US. So that's just one example of the way that smaller companies have tried to manipulate the system so that they can have their review to be fresh. And from there, they would also go and discuss about how is it that Rotten Tomatoes kind of is controlling the system, or that Hollywood has this massive fixation where having that certified fresh rating would mean that it is a big marketing tool that they would go and highlight and that they would go and present. And that often Rotten Tomatoes can actually be something that can be a big make or break deal when it comes to certain movies. Like, one massive problem that they have stated is the way that they would go and how a lot of media related websites would go and heavily emphasize the early reviews that they would get. Now, chances are you probably have seen this online, rather it be people making posts about it on like Facebook or Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever, or maybe you have probably seen it through media related news sites, even like some stuff that's more controlled by fans. But they would go and just publish early reviews where they would say like, oh my God, this new movie just got massive high praise on Rotten Tomatoes. Look at the massive score that it got. But in reality, it turns out that it just got like 6 reviews released, and most of those actual reviews would go and say that it is okay. But on the flip side, they would also say how Rotten Tomatoes could actually be a significant factor as to how it would destroy an entire movie. And in the article, they mentioned how Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny might have been a victim to Rotten Tomatoes' rotten score, where that might have played a significant factor onto how it became a box office bomb. Because when it was first released at the Cannes Film Festival, those people did not really like it, and a bunch of negative reviews started to fill in on that movie. But then, as the weeks went by after its official release, more and more positive reviews came out, where nowadays the Dial of Destiny actually turned out to be fresh, but the damage was already done, and a lot of those negative reviews really affected the box office score of Indiana Jones. And there are other movies that I can think of that might have had that same effect. Like, another good example is the Haunted Mansion movie, the one that recently just came out. Like, I've seen plenty of people, especially Mansion fans, that they actually said that it was really good, that they said that they really liked it. But on the other hand, on Rotten Tomatoes, like, it's got a pretty bad score. I think it got like around under 40%. And I can imagine how that might have played a significant factor onto how that movie ended up flopping, amongst other things as well. But I'm sure Rotten Tomatoes might have been a key player. And also, I just want to go in quick. Actually, before anything, I should have said this at the start. But the thing is that I just want to go and make a big clarification that I am technically a Rotten Tomatoes critic. I actually am registered with Rotten Tomatoes, where I can go and submit the reviews that I make on YouTube, and I would put that onto Rotten Tomatoes system, where I can actually play into the factor if a movie can be good or if a movie is bad. And there have been plenty of movies and plenty of projects that I gave it a positive review and I gave it fresh, or there are some that I would be negative towards and I would give it a rotten score. So I am technically part of that system right there. And also, I want to make a clarification on top of that. Technically, this is not my first time discussing fully about Rotten Tomatoes. Longtime fans of mine might remember years ago that I've made an editorial video to which I would discuss about Rotten Tomatoes and is it really a useful website and are people actually using it correctly? Because the big thing with Rotten Tomatoes, technically the whole system in itself, it's not just a simple number that determines if a movie is good or bad. Because with Rotten Tomatoes, what they do is that they would go and collect a whole bunch of reviews all across the internet, or critics would go and submit their reviews onto the system, and the system would go and determine what is the percentage of how many people would say is good compared to how many people would say is bad. So that's the big thing. And there is also like a little bit more detailed information where people would go and actually leave their score in there. But the big thing, like the big percentage with the tomato meter, like that's just to determine if they give it either like a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Like it really is that significant factor. Like, yeah, each individual review would go a bit more in depth about their thoughts, and they would give a more specific score than just like saying that it's good or bad. You know, they would say like it's either like something, you know, it's either like 4 stars out of 5, or they would give it like 7 out of 10 or whatever. You know, they would do like that kind of stuff. But with Rotten Tomatoes, they would go and highlight that the majority of people either say they liked it or they would say that they won't. And even in this article over here, they actually did describe this, and they would go and mention how is it that this system can be very problematic and very easy to go and read badly. As I mentioned before, there are ways that technically a movie that is mediocre can actually get a massive high rating on Rotten Tomatoes, or they can get a horrible rating, like near 0%. Because technically, like when you would give something either 6 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, those would be considered flat out borderline. So if you can imagine, like and I've already mentioned that in that old video. Let's say you got a movie that 9 out of 10 critics would give a 6 out of 10, while the 10th critic would just give it a 5 out of 10. According to Rotten Tomatoes, that movie is actually a 90% rating. So you know that studios are going to go and heavily emphasize that it is certified fresh, it's 90%, it's really amazing, go and watch it. But then, on the other hand, let's say you got a movie in which 9 out of 10 critics would give it a 5 out of 10, and then you got one critic who gave it a 6 out of 10. And on Rotten Tomatoes, that is just a 10% rating. And many people are going to see this and they will consider that film to be a complete disaster, something that you should avoid. It's not worth watching on the big screen. It is considered to be horrible, one of the worst movies of the year, and all that kind of stuff. So that they would go, so you could see how this system can be very flawed, and it's not a true determined factor, rather if the movie can actually be considered to be great or if it could be considered horrible. So you could see the ways that many people would look at the tomato meter score, and that percentage does not necessarily reflect on how good the movie actually is. But then again, that's not going to stop people from misinterpreting that, and they would go and immediately make their reactions online. Or especially that you would see Hollywood desperately going out of their way to try to use Rotten Tomatoes as something in which they can go and put out raving reviews. And as I mentioned before, one of the biggest problems with Rotten Tomatoes is the way that people would immediately jump the gun and they would go and highlight the major reviews that would be put out early. And I already given out my example about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny of how it could be screwed over, but there's also other examples in which studios tried to use that in their favor, and it kind of did work out. Like the example that this article actually did mention is earlier this year with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, because the first batch of reviews actually turned out to be pretty good. You know, they came out with very positive, solid reviews, and it gave the film a very strong opening. But then eventually more reviews came in, and it turns out it wasn't as great as people really expected. And that's where we saw the box office take a massive nosedive on its second weekend. And the same can actually be said with some indie films, with some smaller movies. Because another example that this article actually provided is in regards to The Whale with Brendan Fraser. Because of the fact that it was released in festivals and critics were like immersed into the glamour of it all, they would go and immediately gave it like raving reviews. But then over time, as The Whale was released in the public, like it got a wider release and now more and more people saw it, a lot of people seem to be a lot less enthusiastic, and that's when you start to see the ratings take a massive dip. So that's just one thing, that's another example to go and very much highlight. But one thing that I do want to state, and I think one of the biggest problems with Rotten Tomatoes that this article did not go and describe, like just to go and further add to this entire piece, the biggest problem with Rotten Tomatoes is not necessarily the website itself, but it's mainly because we are in a very impatient culture. You know, I know it sounds like a little bit conspiracy-like, and I know it sounds like a little too big to make like a criticism about society, but I really do feel like it really is the case in which people want to have their information yesterday. Like they want to have their information as soon as they would go and quickly think about it. They don't want to spend time trying to wait until we see like the true results and stuff like that. They want to immediately go and jump the gun. And unfortunately, with the internet and especially with social media, people are so quick to go and act before they think that they immediately want to go and have their response to say like, oh, look at this rating that this movie got. Oh, look at what is said. I mean, like I said before, how many times have you seen on social media of people making posts or media websites writing articles about the first batch of reviews that came out on Rotten Tomatoes, that they would go and say that, oh, wow, this thing has a very high percentage, it must be amazing. Or, wow, this movie is getting a whole bunch of terrible reviews, it must be garbage, and stuff like that, when it doesn't necessarily reflect of what the general consensus of what that movie may be. Like, there is one issue that starts to feel like a massive problem, where now people are just desperately trying to use it to go and get the information first. And that's what it really is. And like, I am definitely familiar with this kind of attitude, especially like working on YouTube and stuff like that, where people are just so desperate to be the first to go and release that information. And especially when it comes to reviews of a movie, to go and immediately determine like, is this movie good? Is this movie bad? And then like they'll make their final judgment immediately just based on those small handful of reviews. So I think it really is a far bigger problem, where people are just so impatient to get their information that as soon as even just a small taste of it, that's when they would go and make their ultimate decision to say if something is either really good and something is either really bad. And this is not even to mention about another factor about Rotten Tomatoes that is extremely problematic, and that is the audience score. Oh my God, if you think Rotten Tomatoes itself can be easily manipulated, the audience score is an absolute nightmare. Or I would say anything that has a user rating, not just Rotten Tomatoes, but even IMDb or Letterboxd or stuff like that. They can be a massive nightmare, especially when you do have trolls, or you have like these culture war freaks really going out of their way trying to go and like care more about winning the argument more so than openly expressing their thoughts, like it could be a massive disaster where it's pretty much hacked and it's pretty much manipulated to the point where like they're just going out of their way to try to set their own agenda more so than actually being honest with what, with the general use of how they would go and use it. But then again, that whole discussion would be like, that's an entire discussion in itself that can be saved for another day. But anyways, when it comes to Rotten Tomatoes, I feel like this is honestly a discussion, like we've been having this again and again, and it's something that is very prevalent that is a problem. But unfortunately, it's very hard to imagine if people are really going to do something about it. Is that, now that like we've had these discussions, is it really going to be something that will change people's attitude regarding the website? Will they go and change their mindset? Will they go and actually like bail out on Rotten Tomatoes and instead rely on their own intuition to actually go and use to actually go and find their own opinion in terms of the movie? Honestly, that's very hard to say. And not to mention that there are plenty of people out there who are deeply insecure, and they are in desperate need of having Rotten Tomatoes to go and actually confirm their bias. I mean, you have no idea how many people got upset with me and my reviews where they would go and try to use the number on Rotten Tomatoes to try to justify their opinion. Like, see, look at Claudia with a chance of B+. It has a high score on Rotten Tomatoes. That means you're wrong and I'm right. Like that kind of idiotic garbage that would keep happening again and again. But in that regard, I feel like that is something that says a lot more about the user than it does about Rotten Tomatoes, where you're so desperate for validation that you would try to seek anything to try to say that you are right, even if it's like just your subjective opinion or anything. And if you hear an opinion you don't like, then you would try to go out of your way to try to cancel that person or to desperately try to shut off that opinion you don't like to hear. And a lot of people would use Rotten Tomatoes for that purpose. But yeah, overall, I mean, it's such a, it is definitely a problematic website, and both Hollywood and users are using it the wrong way, but it's hard to imagine if people are really going to go and let go of it. I'm sure even after all these discussions, people are still going to be using Rotten Tomatoes the same way that people are having a hard time to break the habit and stop using Twitter, despite all the stupidity and the ways that Elon Musk is completely ruining that website. But still, though, I do feel like, yes, these discussions are worth having. And again, I highly recommend that you go and check out this article right over here. It is definitely worth a read. All right, now with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and now it's time that I would like to ask you all, how do you all feel about Rotten Tomatoes? What piece would you like to add onto this? And if you have read the article, I would love to know what you would think of this. All right, now, I will admit that while I do use Rotten Tomatoes myself to see what critics think of the film, it also has a lot of problems, like how people misinterpret the scores as how good or how bad the movie is, and they don't look at a larger batch of reviews to fully determine how movies are. And I feel like no matter what happens, I personally prefer just going to see the movie for myself and just form my opinion. I mean, that's great of you, dude. I mean, like, I'm glad that you're able to do that, because not many people would have that ability. And unfortunately, with something like Rotten Tomatoes, the reason why it's so popular and why people are still using it, because it's easy to understand and it's easy to use. Just go on the website, look at the number, and if it's big or if it's close to 100%, that's what makes them determine if it's actually good or not. Like, people are not going to put in the effort to actually look into reviews or actually look into why people would go and give either a positive or a negative reviews. Not only do they want their information as soon as possible, they want it in a way that is like easy to go and digest. That not only do they want their information in 1 second, they also want it in a way where it only takes them 1 second to understand it. And that is also a massive flaw. And it's also something that really does highlight a massive problem in our social media dependent society. It's just the fact that people are asking too much in terms of the speed of wanting their information and wanting to know what is the information so that they can consume it as quickly as possible instead of taking the time to actually get into the details. Let's see now. What? A movie review site aggregate site owned by two major movie companies isn't trustworthy? Color me surprised. And yeah, that is technically true, considering that it is Rotten Tomatoes is technically owned by Universal Pictures and Warner Brothers. I actually find this as an absolute good. Rotten Tomatoes has been a blight on film discourse since its inception. I know certain people are ignoring all the nuances of the situation and using it as an excuse to go into aesthetics for movies they don't like, but I'm glad this is happening. If you like a movie, that's okay. If you don't like a movie, that's okay. Exactly. Although I will say, there is one stupid personal bias that I do have that makes me support Rotten Tomatoes, because as a Rotten Tomatoes film critic, I can use that as a leverage for me to see if I can ask studios if I could get early screenings for movies. That's the one positive that I have with Rotten Tomatoes for me personally. I know it says nothing for everyone else, but it's my dumb excuse. I mean, if Rotten Tomatoes can give me early screenings, then so be it. Website is great. Okay, anyways, I remember back in 2016 when Snyderverse fans accused Disney of bribing Rotten Tomatoes for the success of Civil War, despite Pete's Dragon and Alice Through the Looking Glass bombing. I haven't visited the site in years, and I'm only interested in the site if there's a hilarious score comparison. Patience is a virtue, and Rotten Tomatoes has unfortunately added to that, chipping away at that virtue. To me, the most reliable source is from a direct person who has seen the movie and has a specific audience recommendation. That's good, man. That's definitely good. And again, I mean, like with all these culture wars and like with all these conspiracies about like bribing positive reviews and stuff, like I know there is like an evidence like with Bunker 15 and stuff like that, but a lot of like, you know, that a lot of them are just coming from crazy conspiracy theorists who are so insecure about their own opinions. Again, like if you unironically believe that Disney would go and bribe critics in order to get positive reviews, it says a lot more about you, that you are so insecure and that you are unsure about your own personal opinions, more so than it does about Rotten Tomatoes. I'm just saying. Oh, let's see, what other comments do we have here? Any other comments, actually? Holy crap. I don't know, I've been seeing a lot more of the same ones repeating, but anyways, Rotten Tomatoes, it's just a number score in a lot of movies. They got bad reviews. They're actually good movies in a lot of movies. They got good reviews that are bad. The best reviews come from people in the industry who have feelings and ties to what they are watching, like Jeremy Johns, being a big Mortal Kombat fan, or yourself being a big animation historian, really adds to more credence to your reviews than any Rotten Tomatoes score. All right. Let's see. I think I'll read one more at this point. I know that Rotten Tomatoes is a very problematic website when it comes to judging if a movie or a TV show is good or not. I know Dan Murrell talks about this on his channel, but for me, I use that to see what the number is or how many critics like it before going into it to judge my own opinion to see if it's good or not. I know it is still a problem to this day, but I would still use it to see how crazy the fans and critics go for a movie, especially fans. All right, so now that we have this discussion done, it's time that we go into one more break, and when we do return, we will be discussing about Disney, but this time around, for the first time in like probably a long time, we actually have news related to Disney that's actually good and worth anticipating for. And now, everyone, it is time that we will cap this episode off with the grand finale, and boy howdy do I have one major finale for you all. And this time around, I will be discussing about Disney. Now, I know that throughout the summer, Disney has been massively antagonized, with the exception of the Elemental story and going after Ron DeSantis with that little lawsuit. For the most part, Disney has been having a very bad summer, especially with all the other lawsuits that they have gotten. In fact, you probably remember the previous one that I have mentioned, in which it is one of the few lawsuits in which they were called out for allegedly manipulating investors in regards to how Disney Plus is going. And then, of course, there is the way that they are portrayed as the villains during the writers and actors strike. And I mean, it's pretty easy to imagine how they could be the bad guys in that scenario, especially with a lot of Bob Iger's stupid comments that they have put out there. But for once, now we can actually look at Disney in a more positive light, because they have actually made some major announcements that actually shines a very positive and very hopeful future for one of their divisions. And what I'm talking about specifically is in regards to the theme parks. Yes, during the weekend, Disney has had their Destination D23 event, which can be best described as a mini D23 expo. It's not necessarily as big as that expo, but it is a little bit like that, in which they would have like little panels, and they would go and have just a little bit of announcements of what's going to be to come in the future of the company. And especially with this one, they did make a bit of a big deal, considering that they are still celebrating the 100th anniversary of their company. But this time around, in terms of the announcements, the only big ones that they have made, or at least the grand majority of them, are related to the Disney parks and what's going to be happening in the future of those lands. But more especially, they got a whole lot of updates in regards to Walt Disney World. And what I'm going to do here is actually going to be a lightning round, where we will be quickly looking into one by one all the announcements that they have done, specifically in the Destination D23 panel of a celebration of Disney parks, experiences, and products yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So with that said and done, let's go ahead and begin this round here. And to start things off, they decided to go and begin with a little bit of a sketch, you know, kind of a fun little opening in which they featured the Muppets. Now, the only sad thing that came with it is that, no, even though the Muppets came in to have a little bit of a presentation to go and start things off with the panel, there is no announcements in relation to the Muppets at the Disney park. So unfortunately, we got nothing from that. The Muppets were only there for entertainment purposes. But then, following afterwards, they have revealed that Ahsoka Tano, the star of the latest Star Wars series and one of the big stars of Star Wars Clone Wars, will be arriving on Star Tours, where she will be one of the characters that you may end up interacting with in the upcoming version of Star Tours that is coming to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, and Disneyland Paris, which that is going to be happening next year. Then following afterwards, they have revealed that Asha, the protagonist of the upcoming Disney animated feature Wish, will also be arriving in those same areas, where Asha is going to be a meet and greet character later this year at Epcot in Walt Disney World, Disneyland, and Disneyland Paris. Then, following afterwards, they have made the announcement regarding one of the big lands that is coming soon in Hong Kong Disneyland, in which this one is actually an entire world based on the movie Frozen, to which they call it World of Frozen. And they shown a little bit of a big update in terms of the progress of the construction of it all, and they were proud to say that things are almost ready and that they're gonna have a big reveal that now the entire place, including the 2 rides of that area, will be opening this November. And speaking of late November, it's not just, speaking of November, it's not just Elsa that will be coming to Hong Kong Disneyland, but also the Hatbox Ghost is going to be coming to Walt Disney World. Yes, the long anticipated arrival of the Hatbox Ghost is going to be arriving in the Magic Kingdom Walt Disney World version of the Haunted Mansion. He will be arriving in late November, to which they have revealed that he's not going to be in the same place as he is in Disneyland. He's actually going to be right next to the Endless Hallway, in which in that regard, I know a lot of Disney fans have a lot of opinions in regards to that, and they do feel iffy about the Hatbox Ghost placement, but that's another story for another day. But then, following afterwards, they have also made a reveal in terms of the vehicle for what is possibly the most anticipated attraction at Disney's California Adventure. And what I'm talking about is actually going to be the big multiverse ride that's going to be coming to Avengers Campus, a ride in which you'll be jumping from multiverse to multiverse, and you'll be meeting up with as many of the big name Marvel superheroes to go and fight whom I could describe as a super Thanos. And from there, at Destination D23, they have revealed that you're going to be hopping on board this world jumping vehicle, in which they described, reading from my source here at Disney Park blog, Brent Strong, executive creative director at Walt Disney Imagineering, is sharing an early peek at the ride vehicles, featuring a design that combines elements of Tony Stark's time suits with Zardarian jump points and Wakandan technology. Then following afterwards, oh, this is one of the biggest announcements, and what is possibly the most controversial announcement is regarding a massive update to Country Bear Jamboree. Now, to read from my source here, in this part, it states that Disney Imagineer Chris Beatty is on stage with Josh D'Amaro, who is the head of the Disney Parks division, and says when the show debuts, the Bears will be reinterpreting favorite Disney songs in different genres of country music. Imagineers are envisioning the new experience as an homage to the classical musical reviews in Nashville, and they're working with Nashville musicians to get an authentic country sound. The Country Bear Jamboree will still have the fun and friendly tone fans enjoy, with the same famous characters like the lovable Trixie, Big Al, and others. And as you can see, they made a massive update, and even Henry himself got a brand new Nashville themed getup. It doesn't look like Henry is the owner of Country Bear Hell. You know, he looks like he owns the freaking Country Bear Dimmadome. Nah, but for real though, now, this is the one thing that I know that many Disney fans have kind of unleashed their purist side, and some of them did end up becoming pretty upset of the fact that they're going to be changing things up with Country Bear Jamboree, in which they're going to be they're completely taking off the original show that had been playing at Disney World for 50 years, and now they're replacing it with a brand new one. And some of the songs, well, there aren't going to be like original country songs or whatever. They're just going to go and sing some Disney songs, and I think it's safe to say that they will be singing the bare necessities. But I'm just going to go and immediately say right now, and this is going to be a massive hot take, but honestly, I am in full support of Disney updating Country Bear Jamboree, because when I went to Disney World this spring, I was honestly disappointed with the current state of Country Bear Jamboree, like of how it is right now. Because honestly, that ride, whoo boy, it's not great. I know that not too long ago, they actually did do an update on the ride in which they actually what they did, if I recall, they actually abridged it. They made it a lot shorter, and I feel like the edits are so awkward. Like, you could tell the areas where they actually took out, they actually like cut some bits and pieces, and like, I don't know, the editing was really not great. So like, in a way, the original show is not there, and it's been a while that it hasn't been there at Country Bear Jamboree, where now they just have this awkward abridged version of the original. That, and also the animatronics. Holy crap, they need an update on the animatronics, because I swear the mechanisms of them are much louder than the soundtrack itself. Like, you just want to enjoy the show, you just want to watch Big Al do his usual shtick, but then you hear on the side, like, you hear Melvin, Max, and Buff, like the three heads that are just on the side as they're watching the show as well, and they're just like, they're Like, seriously, I feel like with all these noises, it feels like I'm not really watching Country Bear Jamboree. I'm watching Fazbear's Pizzeria. So honestly, I feel like it's at the point where, yes, Country Bear Jamboree absolutely needs a massive update. And if they got to change up the show and even put up this Nashville theme there, then honestly, so be it. And I gotta say, one more comment that I do want to make. I freaking love this poster. I love how whoever worked on this poster did an amazing job staying true to the Mark Davis style and like capturing the attitude of the individual characters. And not to mention that I feel like there's a little bit of a modern touch where it really does feel like concept art you would find for something like Zootopia. Like, honestly, I feel like this is a poster you would legitimately find in Zootopia. So whoever did the artwork on this, the dude did an amazing job. But with that said, if you are wondering when this is going to be happening, keep in mind that this is coming out in 2024. But anyways, moving right along to the other updates we have, another thing they have revealed that apparently in the Magic Kingdom at Adventureland, they have revealed that there is going to now be a Pirates of the Caribbean themed lounge. So this is going to be a place in which you could just relax, you could just you could just take it easy while at the same time immerse yourself into the storyline of Pirates of the Caribbean. So that's another thing that they're going to be working on. And then afterwards, they also talked about in Shanghai Disneyland with what's going to be happening with the upcoming land entirely themed to Zootopia. Now, days before Destination D23, they have already revealed some new information regarding the Zootopia themed land. They talked about the ways that they're going to go and immerse the environment with all the buildings that they have made for it, how you can interact with the characters. There's going to be like puppets that will come out. So kind of similar to with what they did with the Muppets at the Disney parks, except now they're going to be Zootopia characters that will pop out the windows of the area. And they even mention about the upcoming attraction called Zootopia Hot Pursuit, in which the plot line of that is that apparently you are recruited by the police, where now you're going to join Nick Wilde and Judy Hopps as they're going to go on a high-speed pursuit all across Zootopia to go and capture Bellwether and her gang, who has escaped prison because now she has kidnapped Gazelle. And what a coincidence, because on the day of that kidnapping, Gazelle has a major concert that she has to do. So that's the major thing that they got going on. And on top of that, they even revealed what the ride vehicles are going to look like, and even the animatronics of both Clawhauser and Chief Bogo. So I don't think they have revealed when this is going to be coming out, but they did reveal so much details of what's going to be happening with that area. All right, but anyways, going back into Destination D23, another thing that they have revealed is in regards to Epcot. And specifically, there's a new section that will be opening soon called Journey of Water, inspired by Moana. Maybe you have heard about it before, in which there's going to be this entire land in which it's just going to be a walkthrough attraction where you'll be educated about the importance of water and its role on this earth, and like a place where you will also meet Moana and stuff like that. Well, now they have officially revealed that the entire place is going to be open on October 16th. And on top of that, the area that is around Journey of Water, in which they call it the World Celebration Neighborhood, is officially going to be opening in December. And this is a massive deal because this is actually going to be part of Disney's major mission of transforming Epcot in its entirety. And that actually plays a significant role to play like a big piece in that transformation. So that's one major chapter that they will have done until they will go and jump onto the next expansion or the next transformation that they are going to do for this entire mission. Next up, speaking of Epcot, also they have revealed that there is going to be a brand new nighttime show that's coming to Epcot called Luminous: The Symphony of Us, to which that is going to be opening December 5th. Now, there's no details about it, but one thing that I am personally hoping for is that with this one, they are going to go and provide with something original. I mean, I did enjoy Harmonious when I went to watch it, and I mean, that soundtrack is like such a massive banger, but it is true that it really is just this, like a Disney clip show. That's all it was. So honestly, hopefully we will get something more original and not just like regurgitating a whole bunch of different Disney songs. You know what I'm saying? Then after that, this is honestly the most surprising news for me, is the fact that they have revealed that they will be remaking Test Track, in which it is stated here, Imagineers, along with teams from Chevrolet, are reaching back into history for inspiration from the original World of Motion, the original ride that was there before Test Track became Test Track, and bringing that spirit of optimism to the next generation, to the next iteration of the Test Track attraction. More to come in the future. And this is honestly very surprising because it feels like it was not that long ago that Epcot had a big revamp, and that not Epcot, but Test Track got a big update. And I did check. Apparently, it was back in I think in late 2012 or something like that, that they did this big update on Test Track, and that they did this brand new, that they created this brand new version, that they took a massive update and they changed things up from the old, crash test environment to like something completely digital. But now it looks like they're going to do a big update again to a new version. So I guess we'll wait and see with how things will go with this one. Then following afterwards, we went to Disneyland Paris, in which they went and discussed about with the updates that are going on in there with their Frozen themed land, along with updates in regards to the upcoming revamp of their Disneyland hotel. Then following afterwards onto that, they did reveal some cruise news, to which they have revealed that not only are they creating 3 brand new ships in their lineup, but they also have a brand new island destination in the Bahamas called Disney Lookout Cay at Lighthouse Point. And they even mentioned that there's going to be a brand new boat that will be coming soon called the Disney Adventure, in which it will be sailing from Singapore and all throughout Southeast Asia. But wait! There's more in terms of Asian news with Disney, because they also gave a bit of an update in terms of the new section called Fantasy Springs that is in Tokyo Disney Sea, an area that is entirely themed based on Frozen, so yes, another Frozen themed land, Peter Pan, and Tangled, and they have revealed that they are ready to go and open that in 2024. Then following afterwards, they have talked about their blue sky plans. Now, when it comes to the blue sky plans, these are the ideas that they are going to have in the future. That this is like way into the future, and they're just developing the ideas so far. Nothing is set in stone with these. But apparently they are thinking about making a massive expansion that is beyond Big Thunder Mountain. Now, this was an idea that they've already mentioned in the last D23 Expo, but this time around they have been thinking about making this big expansion for the Magic Kingdom, to which they promise that it will be like the biggest since Galaxy's Edge and Pandora: The World of Avatar. And then we go to Disney's Animal Kingdom, and speaking of Zootopia, it looks like we will have to say goodbye to It's Tough to Be a Bug, because now there's going to be a brand new Zootopia show, to which they stated here, the current concept for the new Zootopia experience has guests visiting the different biomes you only glimpse in the film, traveling along with Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde and other characters. And from the looks of it, it looks like they're going to go and promise that on top of seeing all the different characters on the screen, you're also going to have an animatronic of Clawhauser on the side. So we don't know when that's going to be happening, but apparently that seems to be a part of the big plans, where they will be replacing It's Tough to Be a Bug, so say goodbye to Flick and all those other bugs, and now you're going to have an entire Zootopia themed show within the big tree at Disney's Animal Kingdom, aka the Tree of Life. But then there's also another announcement. Now, for a long time, we have heard rumors in regards to the possibility that Dino Land USA is going to be completely replaced. But now they have officially made a confirmation that what they are going to do with Dino Land USA is that they're going to turn it into an entire area that will be themed to the tropical Americas. So basically, an entire area that will be inspired by the northern parts of South America and all around Central America. And on top of that, they also mentioned that in that area, on top of that tropical American theme, there's also going to be areas inspired by Encanto and on Indiana Jones. In fact, they have even mentioned that the dinosaur ride at Animal Kingdom will be completely switched up into, will be switched up into an Indiana Jones ride. And from there, there's only one more announcement that they have made, and they saved this one for last, where now audiences and Disney World guests will finally have their chance to meet Figment. Yes, the last little surprise that they decided to go and do is that they introduced the meet and greet version of Figment, to which they have confirmed that right now you can go to Epcot and actually meet this Figment. And the funny thing about it is that with this costume, I gotta say, like, it looks fantastic. I think Disney did a great job with this character, but my God, Figment is freaking tall. It's like, it's almost intimidating how Figment is like literally towering above everyone else. You know, it's almost like Figment is just happy, like to, Figment is just happy to be like taller than everyone. He's like,
so this is what a real dragon feels like. I can empower you.
Oh boy. Oh wow. Someone even mentioned that apparently he fell. Oh, wow, that did not take long. But yeah, folks, that is all the news that we have gotten from Destination D23, along with the promise that right now, apparently, at Walt Disney Imagineering, they are busy making more projects than ever. And I just gotta say, overall, with all of this, it's pretty crazy to see all the big announcements, especially for Walt Disney World, and kind of funny that only now, right after they finished off Walt Disney World's big 50th anniversary, that now they want to make all the announcements of what's to come in Walt Disney World that would have really benefited to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. I mean, yeah, Cinderella's castle was beautifully decorated, but it would have been nice to even have some of the smaller things, like where the fridge was that Figment meet and greet, where the fridge was the Hotbox Ghost, where the fridge was all those expansions in Animal Kingdom. And where's that Pirates of the Caribbean lounge, you know? Like, those are things that would have been nice to have to celebrate the 50th anniversary, I'm just saying. All right, but anyways, with all that said, let's go into the chat wall, and I would like to ask you all, how do you feel about all these announcements coming from Destination D23? Do you have anything you would like to say, or something that you really want to highlight? All right, let's see what we got here. I know Disney has been through a lot, but this really seems like there is light at the end of the tunnel. I'd say I'm the most excited for the Country Bears revitalization. Revitalization and the changes they're making for Animal Kingdom. I will not miss It's Tough to Be a Bug and its painful stinging benches. I must ask though, why have the Muppets as part of the presentation if they weren't going to announce anything with them? Well, I think a big thing is just, I think the major thing was that they wanted to do their little way to go and celebrate Dave Goelz, who is mostly known as Gonzo and Dr. Bunsen Honeydew, of the fact that this year marks the 50th anniversary of working with the Muppets. So I think it's just Disney's way of celebrating that milestone for Dave. Let's see what else we have here. There was definitely some great announcements, but for me, some of my most anticipated rides are the Avengers Multiverse ride, the new Zootopia Land, and Figment becoming a meet and greet character. However, one I'm a little that there was no updates on is the Disneyland version of Fantasmic and the potential return date if they would rebuild the Maleficent dragon after it caught on fire. Yeah, from what I've heard, they did confirm that it is going to be in 2024, but I guess we will have to wait and see with what's going on with that. I don't know about that either. There's a lot of great announcements during the week. One of them I'm most excited for is Test Track 3.0 and Zootopia Land in Shanghai. For Test Track, I heard a lot of people say that they missed the original, and while I never got to write it, I hope the update will be worthy. As for Zootopia Land, my god, I must go to Shanghai just to visit there. It looks super cool and fun. You'll bet I'll be on a hot pursuit to stop Bellwether. Alright, I think I'll read just one more. I am more happy about all of those announcements that Disney made. Had trauma with It's Tough to Be a Bug, and about time that they get rid of that. And Indiana Jones ride is going to be similar to Disneyland's Figment Meet and Greet and Epcot's nighttime show. Oh, and Avengers Multiverse ride. All right, so with that said and done, I believe that should do it for this episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. And my god, I feel so good with this one. I think this is one of the best episodes that we've had in a while. My god, I feel fully energized with all these great stories to give you all. And also, I just want to go and quickly mention that if you would like to go and follow more of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, don't forget to go and subscribe to my Twitch channel, Animat Live, or subscribe to the AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast YouTube channel. And also, don't forget to go and follow me on whatever podcast service you're listening to, whether it be on Spotify, Google, Amazon, iTunes, and many, many more. And with all that said and done, I would like to say thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, see you later, dudes.